Hi, I'm Graham Salinger. I'm a restorative justice practitioner with the Center for Community Justice. Today, we're going to talk about restorative justice and education through a nonprofit lens. And I'm joined by
Anne Lehman. Nice to be with you today. I also work at the Center for Community Justice as a coordinator for our restorative mediation and facilitation services.
So I'm going to start off by doing an overview of what you can expect from today's talk. So our goal today is to talk about ways that we serve as a case study for how other school districts can use local community partners to foster restorative schools. So we're going to cover the work that we're doing with educators and school administrators, the important role of working with district leadership in creating a foundation for district-wide culture change, best practices for professional development and training, use a current school as an example, our role in helping transform conflict and repair harm through referrals from schools to our organizations, and discuss work that we are doing with youth outside of school contexts.
We'll tell you a little bit about the Center for Community Justice. We are a not-for-profit organization primarily serving the local community in our Northern Indiana, United States location. Our community is made up of several small cities and a rural population as well. Our organization began with some local people who wanted to respond differently to crime in the community in a way that met more of the needs of both the person offending and the person harmed. Our victim offender reconciliation program was the first program at the Center for Community Justice starting in 1977 and was one of the first programs of its kind, helping victims of crime have a voice in a healing process where the person committing the crime would take responsibility for putting things right. From that point, our work in restorative justice expanded to other diversionary programs for legal system involved youth and adults. In more recent times, we have expanded our work to include partnerships with local schools to support them in implementation of restorative justice in education practices. Our mission at CCJ is transforming the communities of Elkhart County through restorative justice, and our purpose is creating safer communities by providing pathways to healing for those in need.
Thank you. And now that we've gone over the context of the Center for Community Justice, we're going to get a little bit into the background of the school district that we're working for to serve as a case study for today. We just want to make sure we had background on both CCJ and the context of the school before getting into specifically what they're doing. And so the school district has a mission as well as goals that we're working with that they've asked us to help work with. So the school's district's mission is that all students share in a guaranteed, rigorous, fair, and equitable education, not only reaching growth expectations on state academic standards, but also developing their talents, skills, and mindsets to meet the challenges in an ever-changing world. During the 2020-21 academic year, they've stated that all schools will implement a multi-tiered system of support, an MTSS model, consisting of coordinated social and emotional learning, trauma-informed care, and restorative practices. So given their mission, they've built us into working with them specifically on restorative justice and how that correlates with social emotional learning as well. So our commitment to the schools have been that CCJ will address a need for social emotional learning, as well as promoting equity in education through a partnership between Center for Community Justice and the school district. So again, when we talk about our restorative justice work with schools, we're contextualizing it within the needs identified by the school district in terms specifically with social emotional learning and promoting equity and inclusion. So that's going to be a lot of the context that we speak from today. So they have a number of long-term and ongoing goals. The first goal is to improve communication and collaboration within buildings, meaning within schools, but also between buildings and district leadership, so between admins and the leadership. And so what is the Center for Community Justice doing to facilitate that? One of the things that we're doing is that we're having an intensive restorative justice training for buildings and district leaders. And that includes working with a cohort of people from the district's social emotional learning team. That also includes principals and other building leaders within that group. And in that training, which is the first cohort is 8 week, the cohorts are 8-week programs. And we cover what is restorative justice in education, being restorative, nurturing healthy relationships, justice and equity, race and identity, repairing harm and transforming conflict, putting it all together, working on a whole school approach. We also facilitate circles across district groups. So for example, we spent about a year working with the leadership team, so the superintendent and sub-superintendents and instructional leaders, just doing community building circles with them. Similarly, Ann and I have done community building circles with the business services team, student services, HR, nurses. We've done work with a number of teams. The work with the HR and student services was a training that I'll speak about in more depth later. And in addition to trainings in the community building circles, we've done weekly student and school resource officer circles. And so that's working with the school resource officer that actually operates in 3 middle schools and having him meet with students across the district middle schools, as well as principals and teachers from the district. So that is really connecting the school resource officer with students, but in doing so, because people are coming from different schools, it also goes to the goal of collaborating between the district schools. And then also conflict coaching and training is a specific service that the Center for Community Justice offers. And so we've done extensive training. I think it was a 3-day training with the HR department and student services for the entire district. And so that built connectivity, so that they had communication and conflict resolution capacity in upping their literacy, and then they would use those skills interdepartmentally and across the district as well. And so this is a quote from the superintendent about one of the circles that was facilitated. And he said, "I really felt the work yesterday was a breakthrough moment for the team. And I had someone from the circle email me about how they felt supported and part of a cohesive team for the first time. Great topic for us to explore." Someone from conflict coaching that I worked with said, "I have a better understanding of my role in the conflict and now feel better equipped to respond when issues arise. Graham was quick to pick up on areas where I needed the most support so that we could really work on them." And from the training that we did with the HR department and school research and student services rather, this has caused me to take a look at a number of factors differently and how to approach them for myself and how to coach others. Someone else added, "I feel empowered and ready to tackle some issues in our department." So again, those testimonials are showing how this work has helped them think about conflict within their context and within their departments. The next long-term goal is to foster improved relationships between students and students and teachers by creating supportive environments that will increase educator effectiveness, will also increase student learning. So this is a lot of the RJ work in terms of building relationships and cultures of support that help support teachers, while also supporting student learning and relationships. And so the Center for Community Justice is doing that by implementation within schools. And Anna's going to talk more extensively about our implementation model and what that looks like using a specific school as an example. This also includes our community building circles, which is when we meet with schools and students and work through having them build community and relationship within those circles. And this also can include conferencing and mediation. Anne's going to get into the tiers later. But this is when we do specific repair of harm or conflict resolution work. And so those are 3 things that we're doing with the goal of helping to foster supportive and restorative environments to increase student-student relationships and student-teacher relationships. And the next goal has to do specifically with the district's equity goals. And so the school district's equity goals are to reduce disciplinary referrals for students of color and reducing the amount of students who require a graduation waiver. And they also want to focus on decreasing the disproportionality of suspensions for students of color and students with special needs. And we view that without the opportunity to constructively address conflict, those kids might be falling through the cracks in terms of being disproportionately represented in terms of facing disciplinary referrals. And so our thought process there is that if we offer doing this work in lieu of the disciplinary measures, then that helps build those cultures. And so we wanted to, again, it's focusing on decreasing disproportionality of suspensions. Improvement in student relationships with peers and teachers. We should see a decrease in student disciplinary infractions, with that being the method that we're using. So it's both about them not being referred to a punitive measure and coming to restorative justice instead, as an avenue for decreasing the suspension rate and expulsion rate. We also hope that addressing harm and building SEL skills, instead of just getting in trouble when something happens, will also build student capacity so that it's kind of sustainable in terms of their long-term in learning and holding themselves accountable. And so that also should be decreasing suspension and expulsion, because kids are increasing their skills and changing their mindsets in restorative ways. So it's both the actual referral to CCJ that should be having an impact on disciplinary discrepancies, but also the skills that are learned by going through those processes. And so overall, the aim is to reduce suspensions and expulsions, and therefore the school to prison pipeline, by having students engage in RJE work with us. And now Anne will talk about implementation.
Thank you. Graham outlined the school district's goals and how the Center for Community Justice is working with the school to assist them in meeting their goals. So as an outside organization that partners with the school district, we see our role as being several things. One is to develop the restorative justice leadership within the school. We work with building leaders and district level leaders to foster understanding of restorative justice in education concepts and practice. We provide training to school leaders, staff, and students within the school district in various restorative justice practices. And thirdly, we provide follow-up support in ways to support people who have participated in training in utilizing the skills in practice. That could be through coaching, consultation, or co-facilitation with staff within the school. Our district uses a 3-tiered model for their multi-tiered systems of support in various things, and restorative justice practices fit with that model as well. Tier 1 are universal practices that apply to all students, all staff, all community members connected within the school organization. Tier 2 practices are things that are early intervention. They're often informal restorative justice approaches using restorative language, or brief interactions with students and staff. And tier 3 is for just a few select people who need the most support and requires more intensive intervention. The 3-tiered approach for restorative justice practices within the school includes tier 1 community building processes. This is for all students, all teachers. It can include classroom circles, but also circles for staff support, as we mentioned. Tier 2 is repair of harm, conflict resolution. And Center for Community Justice provides these through referral to our facilitators for mediation or circles led by trained facilitators. Though we also provide training to school districts as they are, as school staff are trained, they take over the tier 2 stuff within their school. And tier 3 is re-entry processes for students who have been excluded for disciplinary or other reasons, and intensive repair of harm, as well as alternatives to the exclusionary practices. So the steps of our implementation process that we've developed, our work with the local district that we are partnered with includes working with up to 20 different school buildings. And so we provide the option for any of those buildings to opt into partnership with us. And so these steps for implementation would be what we would do with an individual building within the district that chooses to adopt restorative practices and to work at implementation. The first thing is to assess the readiness for the building with the administration of that building. And that includes a survey for the building administrator, plus an in-depth conversation about what their goals are and what they are hoping for, what obstacles they see, really gaining an understanding of what this partnership would look like with the administration. The second step is providing a foundational restorative justice orientation for all staff. These are basic levels of training information so that the staff within that building can learn a little bit about what this is, what this would look like. Following that, we would work at assessing the readiness of the staff. Since restorative justice is so focused and it is so important for stakeholders to be at the leadership for this, we recognize that this is not something an outside organization like the Center for Community Justice should be mandating or driving without the support and the interest of the local stakeholders, which includes the staff within the school. So assessing is this something that they are interested in, that they really want to do, and finding out what their goals are and how we can support them. The next step is making sort of that plan, identifying the leadership group that will provide leadership within the school building, or the implementation team that can give input on what their specific plan for their individual school will look like, what they would like to do restoratively in terms of practices they want to adopt or trainings they would like to do. And then step 5 is providing initial training. Generally, we start with tier 1 training for all staff in community building practices, such as circle or other restorative language, values, and understanding concepts. Following that, we would provide ongoing professional development, coaching, and support, including co-facilitating with the people that have participated in training with us, helping make sure that the training isn't just something they attended and then didn't have any follow-up with. It's very important for us to provide that continued follow-up support. And then step 7 is continuing the rollout of the plan that the implementation team has determined within their school. We mentioned describing a case study of one school that we worked with. This school determined that they would like to do their initial orientation training to include both teaching staff and students together. And so we provided initial foundational and orientation to what circle process is for students and staff at the same time. Following that training, the principal wrote to us and said that truthfully, students were apprehensive to be part of this program, probably thinking that this would reinforce the teachers' positions. However, this was not the case. Honesty and openness by both staff and students provided everyone with that valuable quality and equanimity, along with the importance of listening to each other. I want to mention too, as we name working with individual schools, that the implementation steps that we list are definitely flexible. We want to address the context of each individual school and each individual place that we are working with. And so flexibility is important. The steps might be slightly different than what we named here. So in speaking with the staff of that school and in leadership, we jointly make decisions, collaboratively working together to create steps that can be flexible based on that school's individual context and their needs. We also offer partnerships with the school that are not focused on implementing the restorative practices, recognizing that schools have needs even for support, even as they are still working at figuring out how to incorporate restorative and an implementation model. So Center for Community Justice, as a partner community organization, provides to the school opportunities for the school to make referrals to us. And we offer mediation, facilitated repair of harm conferencing for students that are in conflict, as well as those same services for teachers, administrators, and staff. And we found that the schools that we are working with especially place importance on modeling this at the adult level and not just the student level. So we work with all ages for referrals. We also provide the conflict coaching for teachers, administrators, and staff, again, helping them work through issues in their own lives and their own work so that they can bring their best for the students that they work with. And we also facilitate ongoing community building circles when requested by anyone in the school district. Graham?
Thank you. And I'm going to go through the lessons learned as we think about some of the work that we've been doing district-wide and within the schools. So one of the things is that it really starts at the top in terms of it's only going to be as successful as the leadership views it, right? And so we want to make sure that we really hit home that one of the lessons is the importance of admin sort of leading the charge and taking the reins on that. Additionally, it's really important to go slow to go fast. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes teachers and everybody gets really excited and they want to do a lot of things. Up front, it's really important to sort of slow down and make sure that everybody understands the practice and the theory to make sure that execution is not rushed. We're always excited that schools really want to do this and try it out, but it's also important to make sure that we're doing it with intentionality. And so that's a big lesson for us too, is sort of the pace in terms of the rollout and execution. And on the same note, it's also really important to spend time up front with buy-in, making sure that buy-in is discussed and assessed and really dissected at the beginning, and making sure there's buy-in at the start. You would hate to go into a school, do a bunch of work, and then find out 3 months into it that lots of the staff is resisting. So really laying the groundwork for the sort of the mindset shift and the cultural shift. On that note, it's really important that leaders practice what they preach. We're really fortunate that we talked a little bit about the school district, and you saw his quote, and are working with the leadership team at the top, right? It's really important that district leadership also is leading the charge, and then building level and principals will follow. And sometimes that also means that adults need to model those relationships too, right? If the expectation is that students are going to be working restoratively, it's really important that also adults are working restoratively with each other as well, and sort of offering high expectations, both in terms of staff and students, but also a combination of high expectations and support. And so it's important that is also made with intentionality at the top. We also want to mention that it's really important that professional development in circles are regularly scheduled. And what we just mean is that we don't want restorative justice to come into a school, and this also has to do with buy-in, both sort of buy-in and implementation. But we don't want to come into the school and have that be just a service or a thing that's happening, right? It's really important that it becomes the ethos of the school. That restorative justice is ingrained culturally. It's not just here are some skills to use, it's here's a new way of being. And we find that that means it needs to be sort of regularly scheduled in terms of both the circle practice, but also the professional development with teachers and staff to make sure that it becomes ingrained and not just an ad hoc or when they have time kind of thing. And yeah, just on with that, really making sure that it's part of the school's overall vision and not just one of many things that they're doing. And if we go back to that school that we did the case study of, they actually gave us a vision statement that they had crafted with input from folks at the school. And so their school's vision statement, and you'll sort of see that it's already restorative, and that we're operating sort of marry our restorative practices with the ethos that they already have ingrained in their school. And so what they've said is that their school is committed to serving all students by providing an environment where students will learn to navigate life, find their purpose, and become productive members of our community. We'll create a safe and collaborative culture where all students' needs are met by building positive relationships with staff, peers, self, and community. And so you see there an emphasis not just on sort of the academic learning, but the whole child, especially in terms of student-staff relationships, peer relationships, and community. And so because they have that as their vision, it's very easy for us to come in and do restorative work with them because it's part of their ethos and it's part of the way they're leading. It's not just like they're asking us to come add something else to the teacher's plates. Speaking of which, yeah, we want to sort of use this quote to explain, sort of reemphasize sort of what I was saying, right? But this idea that reclaiming the role of relationships and connection in schools isn't just another thing to add to your plate, it is the plate. And that is from Paul Austin-Cupp, who's a restorative justice trainer. And it's sort of reiterating some of the stuff that we said about lessons learned, right? It's not just more things to do, it's the way of doing things. And so that has to be part of the culture, but it also has to be led by people in very specific ways, we're finding. We also offer a number of other youth services. So while we love working directly with the schools and school leaders and teachers to work on issues around equity, inclusion, and social emotional support, we also offer a number of other youth services to get kids in the community that we might not be reaching in their specific schools, or at least in their education context. And so we're going to go through all of these. The first one is Promise Academy for Conflict Transformation, or PACT. The second is Student Support Conferencing. And the third is Victim Offender Reconciliation Program. So Promise Academy for Conflict Transformation is a month-long workshop series for youth who've been arrested, and we get referrals directly from probation in our department. And so it's a month-long commitment from those who come to our, it's a workshop series, and since COVID has hit, it's been run online, but it originally was in person. And it's a combination of conflict resolution, social emotional development, goal setting, things like that, all done in a restorative context, and all done in circle and in digital circles as they are. And so here's some students talking about, youth talking about how Promise Academy for Conflict Transformation was transformative. So one said, "It was an amazing experience. I learned how to handle situations better while looking at other people's points of view. I think I'll use what I learned for the better." Another student added, "I learned that talking about feelings and emotions due to conflict is better than fighting or arguing, and I learned the ways that my actions affect people. Now I'll talk things through instead of fighting." Another student exclaimed, "It was fun. I was comfortable and I was able to express myself without having to worry about being judged. I like to talk to Alice and Graham and meet new people and learn new things. I learned how to compromise and be helpful towards others. I'll use the things that I have learned to keep me out of trouble." Another one said, "He told me that he liked," these are from parents. "He told me that he liked to go there. He felt that it was easy to speak to the staff and other children without feeling judged. I think that him having to listen to other people with some or close to the same problems helped him open up and know he wasn't alone." And then another parent added that since taking PACT, their child is not in trouble. like before because she is less argumentative with her peers. She's also starting to be better in school and has better family relationships. So in all those testimonials sort of speak to the fact that kids are not only sort of learning these skills, but they're seeing these spaces of non-judgment and how that's then creating avenues in their own life for them to also live in healthy relationships with others. I was just going to add also that since doing that program with probation, another school district in our area has started conversations about us bringing PACT into their schools, specifically to work with students who are up for being expelled or suspended. So it's gone from being something that was for probation to now other actual schools and school districts are hearing about it and wanting us to do it as part of programming for their schools. So it's going to maybe blend or evolve into some intentional work within schools for sort of the most vulnerable of the kids in those schools.
One of the valuable things that we can offer as a community nonprofit organization is to be a neutral third-party presence within the schools, so that if they need an outside support, it can be valuable to bring in neutral facilitators from something that's not a part of the school system. And that's part of what we found within the student support conferencing that we have offered. These referrals are actually coming from school resource officers, which are police officers that are stationed within local schools. And the referrals are with an eye to avoid the criminal legal system. So if a student is struggling within the school and the resource officer identifies that they could use some extra support to avoid potentially legal criminal trouble, they may refer them to our supportive conferencing model, which uses a family group conferencing model. It is strengths-based and includes bringing the student together with their parents or guardians, other family members that are supportive to them, representatives from the school, potentially resource officers, and teachers and other people that are important, that are identified by that student as important to their lives. We bring those people together for a conference to talk together about what the students' strengths are, what their goals are, and what the obstacles are that are standing in their way, and how they can use those strengths to overcome those barriers. Together, we facilitate a conversation with everyone to collaboratively create a plan. So that outcome is a plan with specific measurable steps that the student can follow to work toward success. Some of the students that we have worked with have had really great success through this process. One parent exclaimed, "I was so proud of you," proud mama moment. And the student of that parent said, "My whole life's turned the other way, all the way around." Another student that we worked with described, "The first meeting, I was really nervous and I wasn't really comfortable, you could say. But as the meetings kept going, it felt like a sense of family, honestly, that just cared for you and want to see you excel in everything you do." And that student also said that he ended up graduating from high school pretty much thanks to you guys. Another long-term running program that I mentioned at the beginning is our Victim Offender Reconciliation Program, also known as VORP. This program works with both adults and youth, but is a process to involve people following actual crime to work at repairing the harm that has been caused through an encounter, for the person who caused the crime to have an encounter with the person that they have harmed and work to put things right. This includes reaching out to those who have been harmed in the community and inviting them into a process where they share their needs of what steps could be taken to address the harm, and also working with the youth that caused the harm to help them think about the consequences of their actions, the impact of that, on others and encourage them to be active, to be an active participant in taking steps to put things right. One participant in the program who committed a crime and then got to meet the victim of her crime named, "I think this is a great and beneficial opportunity for the victim and the offender. I feel much better after being able to apologize face to face with the victims." This program does see quite a bit of success. Generally, about 80% of participants who sign contracts to put things right follow through and then complete their contracts successfully, repairing the harm caused by wrongdoing in our community.
All right, and with that, Ann and I would just, on behalf of the Center for Community Justice, thank you for listening to our community sort of resource view of how restorative justice can work from the vantage point of a local nonprofit. We hope that contributed to the knowledge of relational schools. Thank you so much.
Thank you.